Undrafted wide receiver Darius Cooper is the Philadelphia Eagles training camp MVP. I'm going to hand out more awards coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase. You can find us Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. The Philadelphia Eagles concluded 2025 training camp today with their final practice down at the NovaCare Complex in South Philadelphia, and yet another good practice for undrafted rookie wide receiver Darius Cooper, who on yesterday's show, when I was predicting the 53-man roster, I did not have making it in the top 6 wide receivers, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been the MVP of training camp. And after another strong camp today, I'm starting to rethink that decision. I just naturally look back on Howie Roseman's history with this football team, and I feel like a lot of the times they go with an Ainias Smith type of player that they've drafted that's shown signs of progress over the preseason training camp hero. They choose that kind of guy over the Greg Wards of the world or the Rasheed Baileys or the Paul Turners. But I think with how good Darius Cooper has been from start to finish this offseason, I think I would change that prediction from yesterday. I think today, after a final strong practice, he locked up a spot on the 53-man roster, and we're going to hand out training camp awards today. I feel like Darius Cooper is hands down the MVP of training camp from offense and defense combined personnel. Like, Darius Cooper has been maybe the most consistent player in training camp. And obviously, like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, they're your top 3 receivers in 2025. And I think Brown and Smith, when they were on the field, were clearly the best 2 receivers for this roster. But even with how good Dotson's summer has been, and I think he's had a very good offseason, preseason and training camp combined, Cooper has been their 3rd best and most consistent wide receiver. When you combine training camp, when you combine the preseason, I think he's transcending the training camp preseason hero label that, again, we were used to seeing from a Rasheed Bailey, a Paul Turner, and Ifeanyi Moma. I mean, there were just so many guys that shined in the summer, and the Eagles were like, yeah, we're still not keeping this player. And a lot of fans were outraged by that, especially like there was a cult following, it felt like, for Paul Turner. But Darius Cooper, I think there's a middle ground between, I don't think he's, Rasheed Bailey, but I don't think he's Reed Blankenship either. Like, I don't think suddenly he's an undrafted rookie that's a long-term starter on this football team. But I do think he could be another gem they found undrafted, like, Corey Clement in 2017. A player like that has a pretty sizable role that they found for pennies on the dollar. Like, when you look at his explosiveness, his route running, his hands, it sounds like he made an incredible diving catch over the middle of the field today in traffic against the first-team defense, in between guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Jahad Campbell. When you hear him making plays like that with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen is going out of his way in his press conferences to hype up this kid, like, that's a really good sign that this isn't just, again, one of those cult training camp heroes. I think Darius Cooper, because, again, it's not just one big game he had or just a couple big joint practices. He made one insane one-handed catch like Jalen Reagor did against the Patriots in joint practices back in 2021. Like, no. Darius Cooper was really good in June. He was really good in July. He was really good in August. He led your team in receiving in the first preseason game, in the joint practices, and when the first, shoulder padded practices hit the field in July. Like, he was always one of your top 3 players that were making plays every single day. Like, he was, when you combined all positions in training camp, Cooper probably made more plays than anybody. So I think he is hands down your MVP for 2025 training camp. I got more awards, though, for some Eagles who definitely helped their case to either be starters, to be role players, or at least to make the 53-man roster. Let's go to most improved player. For me, there was a lot of guys I considered. Moro Ijoma had a breakout summer. He was maybe their best pass rusher when you combine defensive tackle and edge rushers. I think Tyler Steen was much improved. Jalix Hunt as well. But I'm actually going to say Jeremiah Trotter Jr. was the most improved player. Offense and defense, all those players put together. Trotter, I went back and watched his film against the Cleveland Browns. The way that guy diagnoses plays pre-snap, he knows where the football is going. His vision, his ability to work through traffic, close up running lanes, run fit, avoid and absorb blocks and bounce off of them and take the right angles on tackles. He is always in the right position. He never misses tackles. It feels like he is always aware of what the play needs. And again, I don't think he's the most talented linebacker, but I think he's going to be a long-term starter. Whether it's in Philadelphia or somewhere else, like this kid is clearly a baller. You can tell he's the son of an all-time great Eagles linebacker. Like, he has been so good this summer. He had a good rookie year as well. He had a great summer in 2024. It's insane that this is going to be a player that when the linebacking core is fully healthy, when Nakobe Dean is back from his injury, he's going to be fourth on the depth chart. Like, he's going to be convincingly behind. Like, it's set in stone. It's going to be Zach Bond, I think Jihad Campbell, number 2, Nakobe Dean, number 3, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is your fourth linebacker. When you go out there and watch the film of those last 2 preseason games against Cincinnati and Cleveland, that is not a fourth-string linebacker. That, to me, looks like a starter. The Eagles, for the first time in my lifetime, have an abundance of riches at this position. And if I'm Nakobe Dean, I'm shaking in my boots if I want to be in Philadelphia long-term with my Georgia boys, because the way Campbell and Trotter have looked this summer, Dean is a free agent next offseason. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think Nakobe Dean is back in Philadelphia after this year. I think there's almost no way he gets an extension when you look at the deal they just gave Zach Bond, the first-round pick they spent on Jihad Campbell, the way Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is progressing. I thought Smile Mondon in his second preseason game of his NFL career made some really good strides. Those are 4 other linebackers not named Nakobe Dean that I think the Eagles are really excited about. And so if I'm Dean, I'm nervous because Jeremiah Trotter Jr., again, he's 4th on this list, and I thought he was the most improved player in training camp. My pleasant surprise of training camp. Yesterday, I talked about one of them, A.J. Dillon, on offense, so I wanted to talk about somebody else today. It's defensive tackle Gabe Hall. And Gabe Hall was somebody, again, I've probably said it a few times on the show, but me and Gino, when he was coming out of Baylor, we did really like him, and we were surprised that he fell as far as he did, and the fact that the Eagles got him and stashed him away on the practice squad, it felt like it was a matter of time that, he'd be competing for a spot on this roster, but I don't think, again, I was going back and watching the film this week from that game against Cleveland. I don't think I realized I realized how good he was watching the games, but I don't think I predicted Hall was going to take this kind of leap. Like, I almost think Gabe Hall is somebody that can play meaningful snaps, even more than Thomas Booker in 2024. I think Gabe Hall could be a part of this rotation in 2025. The fact that you have him and Ty Robinson behind your top 3 of Jalen Carter, Moro Ijoma, and Jordan Davis, like, I know the variance, the floor is a lot lower for the defense this year than last year, but I think the ceiling could be as high, if not higher. I love the young depth of a lot of these positions. And Gabe Hall is your 5th defensive tackle. There's a reason they were comfortable trading Thomas Booker. It's because Gabe Hall has been one of the more pleasant surprises of training camp. Like, he was really good getting to the quarterback in both preseason games. I thought in the red zone he was great against the run. Gabe Hall, pleasant surprise of 2025. Rookie of camp. For me, obviously Darius Cooper, we talked about, is number 1. But I think number 2 goes without saying. Drew Makuba was great in that preseason game on Saturday, but it's Jihad Campbell. I mean, Jihad Campbell, another guy, I think I was surprised how far along he was already at inside linebacker. Like, I think that is his natural position. The way he almost got an interception in that first game, the way he played the run was great. He got a sack on the first play of the game against Cleveland. He's been one of the best players on the field day after day in practice over the last calendar month. He's healthy. I think he won a starting job at linebacker with Dean likely not ready to start the year. I don't know if Dean's going to have a job to come back to. Campbell looks like he's just yet another guy that Howie Roseman stole in the first round, like he did Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and Quinyon Mitchell. Like, this has been the theme of the NFL draft on day one the last few years, is how do you keep letting Howie Roseman get away with this? And I think he pulled it off again with Jahad Campbell. And then a negative award to wrap up our training camp awards for 2025. Most disappointing, I do believe that does go to Keely Ringo. And again, I still believe in Keely Ringo, but the fact that he wasn't able to convincingly win this CB3 job, and the fact that we're looking at a very good likelihood that Adoree Jackson is going to end up being a starting corner week 1 over Ringo, or maybe it's Jacorian Bennett. We'll see. I still think there's a chance that Ringo's the starter, but Adoree Jackson, again, the last 2 days of practice, has been the first team corner out there. Ringo didn't even practice today with a quad injury. He's behind the 8 ball, and I think that's really disappointing, and I think the Eagles would agree with that. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, Anthony Richardson was benched for Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. Could Howie Roseman start sniffing around a potential trade with Indy? Could he maybe do a quarterback-for-quarterback swap? We'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back and in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and the guys of Locked On Eagles squad, we're playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. I've been doing a 13-team league since 2009, and we have so many features we require for our league. Yahoo Fantasy is the only platform we trust. To kick it off, they actually just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues. It's a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there is one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league as well. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. So I'm thinking about more trades that Howie Roseman could make in the month of August. He's already made 2, dealing for Jacorian Bennett, the corner, and John Mechie, a wide receiver. Howie loves to make moves all the way up until the start of the season. And, I mean, until the trade deadline, Howie's always looking to make moves. There's another move that I could see him at least sniff around, and it has to do with quarterback. We know Howie loves to invest. You know, he regrets the quarterback factory statement of 2020, but he does like to have his quarterback room from top to bottom have talent. He wants to have a franchise quarterback. He wants to have a very high-level backup because he's needed that high-level backup to win championships, to play in playoff games for, I mean, what, like 4 of 5 playoffs? Before Jalen Hurts, Howie Roseman's backup quarterback played in a playoff game. Let's see, 2010, technically, because Kevin Cobb started the season and Michael Vick was the backup, and he ended up starting in the playoffs that year. 2013, it started off as Michael Vick, and Nick Foles was the backup. And then Nick Foles in 2017, 2018, Josh McCown in 2019. So he wants to have a legit guy because he won a championship with a backup quarterback. So, of course, he's obsessed with adding talent like Tanner McKee, like a Nick Foles or a Jalen Hurts. And then he can also use those guys as trade assets, like Kenny Pickett even last year. The fact that I don't even think Kenny Pickett, I think that was one of Howie's worst backup quarterback moves, and they ended up getting draft picks for him and another quarterback in DTR. So he's always going to try to add, especially with Tanner McKee's contract ending in a couple years. Like, they want to continue to add long-term talent behind Jalen Hurts. I wonder if they would be interested in Anthony Richardson. Now that he was benched, I think Indianapolis prematurely, in my opinion, but they gave up on the Richardson experience for Daniel Jones, which is crazy. I don't see the upside there. I just think Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen are trying to win 9 games and save their career. Although I think Richardson becoming a franchise quarterback, that saves your career, not the 6-7 wins that Daniel Jones is going to get you. But I digress. They've made their bed. I think Anthony Richardson probably wants a change of scenery. Would the Eagles be interested? Like, why not? This is a former top 5 pick that's only started 13 games. And I think kind of like Trey Lance, we all knew coming into the NFL, this guy barely played college football. combine when you combine college football in the NFL, this guy has like less than 30 starts. You knew he needed seasoning. He's only 23. He's got all the traits in the world that you want in a franchise quarterback. Like, obviously, he's to blame for a lot of this benching. He pulled himself out of a game last year. Like, that's just inexcusable. So he's very far behind. But I don't think it's over for him. And if he wants to come in and kind of be a reclamation project and start fresh somewhere, maybe come to a system that I think fits you better with a lot of talent, learn behind Jalen Hurts, who I think stylistically is very similar to the type of player that Anthony Richardson is. I think it would make sense for Richardson. I think it would make sense for the Eagles. Richardson still has 3 years of control you have on his contract, 2 more years of his rookie deal, plus a 5th-year option. Tanner McKee's only got 2 years left on his deal. You could maybe look to trade Tanner McKee eventually, maybe next year for some picks, and then Richardson's your backup quarterback. That's the perfect kind of backup quarterback for Jalen Hurts. Like, I don't know. It's something that's very intriguing. And I got ratioed on this on X today, but I did suggest the idea of trading Tanner McKee for Anthony Richardson. I don't think it would happen because McKee right now is the better player. If Jalen Hurts went down, you have a better chance of still making the playoffs and competing for a championship with Tanner McKee than you do Anthony Richardson. But I would think about it if I was the Eagles. Like, who says no if it's a trade between the Eagles and the Colts? Let's say the Eagles, they call up Chris Ballard and say, we'll do a straight-up trade. We'll give you Tanner McKee for Anthony Richardson, deal or no deal. Like, who says no? I think it's probably the Eagles, right? But if I'm the Eagles, like, I don't want to say I would do it and I would run to the podium, if you will, for a draft analogy there, but I would consider it. I don't think the drop-off is that substantial. Like, I don't think Anthony Richardson's like a Jamarcus Russell-level bust that just cannot play. I think Richardson, in this more simplistic offense that fits his skill set more, that fits a mobile quarterback, he's got all of this talent in Philadelphia at his disposal. If Jalen Hurts were to go down, I still think they could win with Richardson. And I think then the long-term play of having him as your quarterback, your QB2 is more enticing than Tanner McKee, because Tanner McKee is an upgrade right now as a backup quarterback, but I think Richardson eventually could be just as good as him, if not better. I think he has a much higher ceiling. I think he fits this system better, and eventually you could get a much better draft pick for Anthony Richardson than Tanner McKee. Like, there is a scenario at one point you could get a day 2 pick for Anthony Richardson, whereas with Tanner McKee, I don't know if that's ever possible, because as good as he is, that mobility, the lack of mobility, will always cap his value, in my opinion. So, I think most fans ratioed me today and said that's a ridiculous proposal, that the Eagles would never do that trade. But I would consider it. I personally would do the deal. It would hurt them right now, but I think in the future it would actually be the better move. I think it would be the smarter move. But I think, the vast majority of my listeners, and I think the Eagles themselves, would say no. I think they value Tanner McKee a lot. I think they really value the backup quarterback position when they're competing for Super Bowls. They're competing for a Super Bowl this year. McKee is the better option to win you. If there is a scenario where somebody pulls off a Nick Foles this year, if Jalen Hurts were to go down, it would be McKee over Richardson. I put my money on Tanner over A-Rod, but for A-Rich, I should say, is his nickname. But for the long term, it would be something interesting. Even if it's not a McKee for Richardson trade straight up, if the Colts were interested in a couple day 3 picks, the Eagles have a ton of day 3 picks in 2025 and 2026. 2026 and 2027, I should say. I wouldn't be opposed. I think it's a very Howie Roseman type of move. But I think there would be other teams that vision him as a long-term starter that would be willing to give up more. Like, I think teams like the Raiders could be interested more. A team like the Raiders, maybe the Vikings. Yeah, there were a couple other teams I suggested. The Cleveland Browns would make sense, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, who knows? But I think the Eagles, if the price is right, I would be interested in Anthony Richardson. All right, guys, we'll wrap up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, the last day of practice was one of Jalen Hurts' best for training camp. Shocker, Jalen Hurts saved his best for last. We'll recap that practice coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best way to get tickets. If you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family, maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands, and that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you can save on tickets, you can then splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app, they actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. For me, I went to Blue Jays Yankees a few weeks ago in Toronto. A couple of my friends are diehard Yankees fans. We got our tickets through Gametime. Great price. I like to make sure that it's a good seat view before I buy the ticket. Sometimes on other platforms it can be a bit misleading. Gametime has the seat view on the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. The Eagles wrapped up 2025's edition of training camp down in South Philadelphia at the NovaCare Complex, and it was great to hear. Not that we were worried about Jalen Hurts, about the offense, but it was an up-and-down summer for the offense, injury-rattled summer for the offense. Jalen Hurts, great to hear he finished his final camp practice with one of the best performances that he has put together this summer. He had 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. And the best part, the most encouraging part of what he did today, and why I'm so encouraged, is because I think it's a sign that he could start to elevate this offense even more this year as a passer inside the pocket if they are injured, if he has to do that. Because today, he had one of his best practices, and he did it without Lane Johnson, without Landon Dickerson, without Saquon Barkley. He did it without A.J. Brown. Like, the majority of his work today was with Darius Cooper and Jahan Dotson. Like, you got a glimpse into Hurts potentially taking that next step as a passer where, you know, last year against Tampa Bay week 4, when it was Paris Campbell and Jahan Dotson and John Ross, when they had no A.J. Brown, no Devontae Smith, I trusted that Jalen Hurts could elevate the offense and the team to still win that game enough, but I thought about it more from a running perspective, more about the intangibles, the clutch gene, the things that Jalen already was elite at, not turning the football over. But my brain never said his arm is going to, like, he is going to throw these guys open. Like, that has never been a huge part of Jalen's game. He's had some incredible passing games, but I've never really felt like he has, you know, like, created for his receivers. I don't want to say he's never done that, but it's not like one of his superpowers, right? His superpowers are different than other quarterbacks. But this year, after seeing what he did, you know, against Pittsburgh last year and in the NFC Championship and in the Super Bowl, and then hearing, like, throughout OTAs how surgical he was and some of the bright spots he's had in training camp, what he did today, I am starting to believe that, like, if there is a game that, look, you don't have all of these guys. You don't have Saquon and or Devontae and AJ and Dallas Goedert. Not only can you still win the football game, but it doesn't have to be 17-13. It doesn't have to be leaning on the run game. Like, Jalen can still make it work with Darius Cooper, with John Mechie, with Jahan Dotson, with just 1 or 2 of those top 4 weapons that you have in this offense. Because that's what he did today. And he didn't have 2 of his starting offensive linemen. He didn't have a starting running back. And he didn't have his number 1 wide receiver that impacts the passing game more than anybody else. Like, the 2 guys that affect the passing game the most, Lane Johnson and A.J. Brown, were not in this practice, and Jalen Hurts diced up the defense. So that's why I was so encouraged to hear what happened today in practice. It also was just more proof that Jalen saves his elite performances for the most important stages, like, again, the NFC title, the Super Bowl, playoff games. Got to have it moments in the regular season, you know, late in close games against really good football teams. Like, that is when I've made the take on the show before. Jalen Hurts is most of the time a top 10 quarterback with top 5 moments, but he's always a top 5 quarterback in the moments that matter the most. And today was just a practice, but hey, your offense has been kind of inconsistent over the last month. You're really banged up. This is your last practice. You're not going to play in the preseason. This is your last meaningful live action, I would say, to a degree of this competition until week 1, September 4th, Thursday night, the opener against the Dallas Cowboys. So for Jalen to put together this kind of performance, again, it's just more proof that this is what Jalen does. It's crunch time. He's got to get it done. He doesn't have a lot of his starters on offense today. Ends up with one of the best performances of the summer. That was just so encouraging. And another thing, what I loved about Jalen's practice today, it sounds like one of his touchdowns in the red zone was with Nolan Smith just screaming downhill in his face, got really good pressure. And Jalen actually threw the touchdown around Nolan Smith on a different arm angle. And again, that is what I'm excited about even more, too. It's a continuous sign of his evolution as a passer that makes me excited about his, potentially taking a next step this year as a pocket passer compared to his career so far since 2020, because Jalen Hurts has never really been a quarterback that throws from different arm angles. He is not a Matt Stafford or Lamar Jackson just throwing it completely sidearm, or, a guy that can throw across his body as well as other quarterbacks. I think he took a real nice step throwing on the run last year compared to the majority of his career, but still, that's not his superpower like it was. Even Nick Foles and Carson Wentz were more twitchy passers than Jalen. Jalen has more of a stiff, while it's really continuous and smooth, it's a stiffer, one motion, kind of very consistent throwing motion. But you don't really see him, again, throw different kinds of passes from an arm angle perspective. To hear that he was doing that today, again, that's really beneficial, because when there is pressure in your face, when you can throw from a different angle, like when you have a defensive tackle that's a lot taller than you, or an edge rusher getting his hands up, or a linebacker intercepting a passing lane, when you can throw from other angles, that can help you be more efficient, and you can complete a higher percentage of your balls. So this was a very encouraging practice. Again, I wasn't worried about Jalen Hurts. I wasn't worried about the offense, but the context of how he did it today, throwing from other angles, throwing the ball very efficiently without a lot of his starters up front, in the passing game, at receiver, in the backfield. That's a great finish to training camp, and I think it makes people feel a lot better heading into this opener against the Dallas Cowboys. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase LOE. I'm going to sign off for now until tomorrow. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.